In what was a 129-109 win over the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Pacers found their comfort zone, not only by poking and prodding more efficiently against the 3-2 zone that stalled out their offense in Game 3, but also by making their opponent decidedly less comfortable. They led by as many as 44 points, they never trailed, and they erupted for a playoff franchise record 80 points in the first half alone. Joining me to talk about the extremely hot girl basketball, my favorite basketball writer and talker, Samson Folk.
I'm excited because we are front runners once again. And this is kind of like we're melding with Tyrese, because Tyrese sometimes is like, I'm confused by this perception of me. We've marketed ourselves as this braggadocious front running podcast, but actually you listen to the podcast, it's very earnest, let's say, just looking at the film, very respectful of both teams, but we're going to get a reputation as front runners and with our braggadocio. And I just wonder where it's going to lead us. Are we going to get away from the film? Are we going to start talking smack? This
Man, it's tough to say. The part of the problem is we have this reputation because we skipped out on the first loss. We didn't do a podcast when
that
they
was my
lost the first
fault.
time.
Now I'll say you didn't actually say this, but like the reason why I didn't was because it was the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith. And my friends, we bought tickets way ahead and I had to go. And it was incredible. It was, watching Obi-Wan Kenobi. Well, you probably don't get this. You don't care. Anyway.
I appreciated the Obi in this basketball game.
Wow, yes.
There we go. Obi won.
Whoa. Excellent. Yeah. He was great. He was fantastic. He was unbelievable. There's a reason why I chose he and Pascal as the not so much the feature of the piece I wrote, but at least the title, and also cute little power ring them forward, power forwards.
I do like wordplay.
Yeah. Big feature of this podcast. He is, and this is what I wrote about when I wrote that big piece on Obi, was that he scores efficiently out of everywhere. And he is the bellwether for hot girl basketball, of course, because he is so hyper efficient when he's put in the right spots. And when the defense bends for his first basket of the game, for example, is their line gets too high, he cuts, it's a corner crash. And who's it? Max Strus at the basket. Is he going to stop Obi Toppin from going up? Not at all. It was that the Cavs oversold defending other things and Obi toppled the rest of it. It was just like very, very impressive. And we've been waiting for the Obi game. There were like 4 in the first 9 playoff games last year. We had 0 to this point. There it was. Obi Toppin is popping.
Is it a coincidence that this was the hottest hot girl basketball game of the playoffs when there was also an Obi game?
I don't think so.
Not.
And I told you. Well, actually, I didn't tell you. I wrote it in the piece, is that yesterday I played basketball before the Pacers game, and I ate a creamsicle. I was summoning all of the necessary juju.
It's important. The Pacers broadcast sideline reporter also went to Nicey Treat ahead of the game yesterday. I feel like this
Jeremiah Johnson?
Yes, I feel like this was a very important factor in the win, as well as the fact that I went out and picked up takeout food. People might have seen this on Twitter. I was picking up the order. I was by myself. They were giving out fresh cut roses and a cookie to anyone who is celebrating Mother's Day. They said, "Are you celebrating Mother's Day?" I said, "No, I'm not." And I was heartbroken, not because I don't have children, but because the cookie looked that good. And I had to live with the fact that my honesty cost me that cookie. But as it turns out, the basketball gods reward cookie honesty. I don't think there's any other way to explain this basketball game except for the film that we will actually look at and break down now. So I think from the very beginning of the game, a big thing that the two of us talked about, or at least that I felt was the most important thing, was the intensity informing the intention and the feedback loop of both of those things. So I felt like the demeanor from possession 1 was quite a bit different. So in addition to them getting the steal, Pascal diving on a loose ball, Tyrese making a dunk at the other end, all within the first minute. This was actually my favorite sequence of the entire basketball game. So let me roll it up there. In the sense that the basketball is the most important part of basketball, Samson. Look at how many Pacers are boxing out when a 3-point shot goes up. Actual attention and focus on the defensive glass. Is this very exciting to break down? No. But was it necessary? Yes. Then on what would have been their opening set, because they didn't have to run an opening set on what was a breakaway dunk for Tyrese, they're running a stagger. Max Strus is top blocking Tyrese as he's been doing and has the rest of the Cavs have been doing through the past 2 games. And normally what you would think this was going to be is when he rejects that, he stays in the lane and they flow into stack from that. That's how they get the top block off of Tyrese. It's a way, reject, into stack pick and roll with Nembhard running it. But they didn't actually do that, which was telling to me. Tyrese is more or less just a red herring cutting from the corner to the wing so that they can very intentionally enter the ball to Pascal Siakam at the elbow and then attack with Aaron Nesmith against the mismatch with Darius Garland underneath. Aaron Nesmith doesn't actually complete that pass because Jarrett Allen comes all the way off the corner. Miles Turner tries to drive against the indirect closeout, makes an errant pass. But who's quicker to the ball? It's no longer an 80-20 ball, Samson. It is a 50-50 ball that Tyrese gets to first and then finds Aaron for what ended up being a half of extremely elite shot making. So I felt like that 2 ends of the floor summarized pretty much the entirety of what this game was. Better attention on the glass, nearly pulled even in the offensive rebounding battle. Got a turnover on the very first possession, which was very key to how the Pacers won this game when they themselves finally attempted 23 more shots than the Cleveland Cavaliers, in part because of how many times the Cavs turned the ball over. And then we both asked, are they going to continue to use Tyrese in 4-on-4 settings and work through the rest of the people on the floor? And if they are, will Siakam get more intentional touches? Or is this a case of they're going to need to run some more set plays to free Tyrese up against the coverage and he's getting more shots? It was the former, and Pascal Siakam played a really big part in this basketball game.
I do want to thank David Aldridge for highlighting the podcast. I assume there will be a couple people listening today that were introduced to it via him, and the fact that this podcast attempts to not just diagnose what has happened, but to kind of try and problem solve a little bit of what has gone wrong and see perhaps what the Pacers are able to do. I can do this kind of stuff with the Raptors, but I will say, full stop, this is the benefit of Caitlin Cooper, the best basketball writer in the world. Very few people can do this, especially in the media sphere. Very excited to look at how the Pacers accomplish things, but we also look at the boring stuff, which is what we just did. The opening of Game 3's podcast. The opening of Game 3's podcast was us looking at Tyrese getting like bullied a little bit off ball by Darius Garland, putting 2 hands, shoving, just like, this is the physicality. And it was the convergence of so many different things, like Pascal used intentionally. They've got more physicality. Their offense gets them a look that they don't score on, but their physicality and intentionality and quickness to the ball, playing with force, as it were, puts them in a spot where, okay, their offense can create something again. The stuff we were seeing at the end of games 1 and 2, and especially 2 when they're scrambling around, I don't know how many, because I think they grabbed, you said the Cavs allowed 27 offensive rebounds off of free throws in the regular season. I think the Pacers must have like 8 already in this series. Just chaos, force, physicality. They didn't have to steal anything. They could have shot much worse and still won this game comfortably, but they hit the high note on everything. It was a great game, super fun. And it was if you and I were drawing up the game plan as, outside observers, like, I'd like to see this happen through these means. We got it. It was like, is the Samson and Caitlin and Samson, I should say, a little game plan.
What I think is funny is at the end of our long session of banter on Saturday, the last thing I said was, hopefully when we come back after Game 4, we won't have to talk about any of these things again, because I don't really want to talk about any of these things again. And we are going to talk about them all, but in a much more positive light, which was evident, as I said, from the within the first minute of the game. The next thing that I thought stood out heavily, the Pacers, 21 possessions in this game, with at least 3 backcourt defenders present.
Yeah.
Now, you can do that a little bit more when you are making shots and you're actually scoring against the zone, which is why you and I have said so many times this is very much not a 2 ends of the floor team. This is a 1 end of the floor team because their ability to score allows them to set their press, and their ability to press allows them to get more stops, which makes it easier for them to run and score. So that's how they get into those cycles. Well, here's what people need to know about the Pacers having 21 possessions with at least 3 backcourt defenders in that game. That's more than any team that's left in the playoffs has for the entirety of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's more than 12 playoff teams have for the entirety of the playoffs in just one basketball game. And they held the Cavs to 0.905 points per possession on those 21 possessions, including forcing 7 turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
This is what that looks like in real time. And obviously, Andrew Nembhard makes that shot against the zone very early, which we'll talk about coming up. But all three, Tyrese and Aaron and Nembhard, are up on most of the possessions at the beginning of the game, shadowing towards Donovan Mitchell as much as they can to try to drain clock until they're not into their first action until 15 seconds. Nembhard, very good, runs the seam as I've been begging and wanting the Pacers to do to steal that pocket pass. Then Ben Shepherd comes in, which Samson, I don't know if you know, a brief aside about Ben Shepherd. He's played in all these games, Samson. Last night, he scored in double figures. He banked in a 3. He made another 3 against the zone. He made a layup with his offhand, switching hands. You're getting close. The Pacers are 3-1 in this series.
Yeah.
You might have to live up to what you said you were going to do.
I was hoping you'd forget. Although, yeah, I don't think everyone would forget all at once. The beard will be gone if the Pacers win this series, and I'll be left just mustachioed. And Blake, I told him about this. And also, I'll say, I didn't watch this game. Blake Murphy, he's a tremendous sports writer. He just does everything in Toronto. For people who don't know, I watched game 3 with him. He's clearly the bad luck charm, by the way. He's at fault. But he did say, he's like the bald head and the mustache. He's like, you're going to look like such a pervert, dude. And so we're approaching bald head and mustache.
What I think is funny is that I promised nothing. It wasn't as if there was any type of bet here. You just volunteered this. You must have been really confident that the Pacers weren't going to win because you just volunteered it. It wasn't as if I said, well, if this happens, I'll do X, Y, or Z. I promised nothing.
You are well aware of me, Caitlin. You know that I like to introduce stakes to everything. Trey and I, for no reason, by the way, it's the draft lottery today. If there are any Pacers fans who see me as a sign of goodwill of the Raptors, prayer circle in chat for Raptors to get the number one pick tonight. However, Trey and I offered up $300 each if the Raptors win the lottery. So there will be a listener of our podcast gets $600 if the Raptors win the lottery. Why did we do this? I don't know. We simply like to offer up. I think
you were so confident that it wouldn't happen that you were like, sure, we'll give away $600.
No, I like to propose stakes for everything. It gives a little bit of oomph. You know what I mean? It's like, now I have a mustache. Now, this is interesting. Anyway,
I offered no stakes. I don't know what the woman version of promising to go only mustache actually is. I've offered no stakes, listeners, but Ben Shepherd is on the court in this possession, picking up, applying pressure. The Cavs are going into stack, which means Shepherd and Nembhard are going to switch it. They turn off the water against Ty Jerome, and not only turn it off, but I do not have the graphic. I do not have the shameless plug, but the reason why Ty Jerome traveled is because Nembhard pulled the chair, and he fell, and that was a good moment. I think most people are probably going to focus on like the 19-2 run to close the half and Miles Turner's incredible shot making, where I'm pretty sure it was like an out-of-body experience. But the defense actually did play a pretty big part in this, especially as far as the possession war goes.
Also address like the backcourt defender thing, right? Is that you and I talked earlier on one of our very first podcasts of the season, which we did kind of infrequently, that press sometimes can be a means to speed teams up, but it also can be a means to slow teams down. And depending on how you utilize it, is the type of outcome you're looking. And even the way that like Nembhard ran that seam was because the Cavs were convinced in that, or at least Donovan was convinced on that possession, that like this is kind of running as if it were a transition play because the floor is open to some degree. Like it's in this imbalanced way. I have to try and hit the paint, but it's just him one-on-one against what is more or less a set defense with Nembhard running the seam behind, and he's just not able to like play make properly against that set. And it's because the Pacers, not only do they apply that pressure, slow things down, but it also sets a different look than Mitchell's expecting, and he doesn't make the proper read against it. It was just like that kind of stuff. You can slow teams down. Yes. You can move them farther into the shot clock. Yes, which is important, really important. But you can speed them up into things that they can be kind of like, it works similar to the fake switch hunting when the guy they're trying to hunt isn't actually that bad. And you're like, is our whole offense this? You can kind of coax certain shot types out of lead ball handlers if you put them in that press situation. And this mix of looks that the Pacers are sending at the Cavs was a really, really potent mix in this one. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. But yeah, turnovers.
The Cavs had 22 turnovers, which was the second most turnovers that any Pacer opponent has had in a game this year. Also, to your point, the Cavs' average time to first action was 6.814 seconds in this game, which would have ranked 27th in the league during the regular season. So they got them playing a bit deeper into the clock. Are you ready to move on to the title of this podcast, which is the Pacers found their comfort zone?
Is this the last zone pun we're going to be able to run like this playoffs? Or
let's say that the Pacers advance and it goes really poorly. I think I could probably whip out the Pacers are in the danger zone. I think there's more. There's more puns. You underestimate my ability to use wordplay and titles, Samson. I do it in almost every post.
I'm looking forward to it.
The zone. The Pacers faced only 12 possessions of zone in this game because they scored 1.917 points per possession against that zone, so it wasn't a super effective tactic for the Cleveland Cavaliers to go back to, considering in Game 3, when we talked about this in ad nauseum, they had played 23 possessions of zone and the Pacers had only been able to muster 0.696 points per possession. So again, another turnaround. These weren't things that I hoped to talk about, but since they go so much better, I like a dramatic before and after.
And I'll quickly say something. Those numbers, for people who don't know about the 1.9 thing, contextualizing that, the Pacers came very close to just basically shooting 100% on twos is the way that points per possession works out against the zone. Good. 3 times, like almost 3 times as effective as Game 3, which is quite a change.
And to point out, I'm fairly confident somebody will be like, well, yeah, they made threes and they didn't make threes in the prior game. That's true. They shot 0 of 9 against the zone on Friday, and they shot 5 of 7 against the zone on Sunday. But these were more in rhythm shots than the ones that we were witnessing, which 66% of which were highly contested in that game.
Mm-hmm.
So, a call back to the prior show. Both of us were like, if Mobley's going to play at the top of the zone, and I want to clarify because it seemed like there was some confusion amongst people that we were insinuating that Paul George and Evan Mobley are similar players. In fact, no, that was not our point.
Wait, because I brought that up. Sorry, I was juxtaposing.
Yes.
Them. Okay.
Yes.
And also, when we say this about Evan Mobley, we're not trying to insinuate that he's a bad defender. Like this is a respectful podcast where we talk about players respectfully. Evan Mobley is the defensive player of the year. He deserves his flowers. However, he is a large man. And I said, like, the common basketball ethic is like big man on the perimeter, see if he can move in isolation one or around screens. Like that's it.
Yeah, the point that we were making with Paul George is that Paul George is an anomaly for a person that size and his ability to float over the top of screens. In fact, if anything, we were showing respect to Evan Mobley because it was so hard for the Pacers, and particularly Tyrese, to pass around and do anything with Evan Mobley solely in isolation at the top of the zone. Hence why we were saying screen Evan Mobley. Well, lo and behold, the Pacers did screen Evan Mobley. So this was from Friday where you and I were kind of like, it's a little bit too much of an expectation for Miles to solely be trying to play make with static offense around him from the middle of a zone. He does many things well. Manipulating defenders as a passer isn't necessarily one of them, and he wasn't necessarily making the best reads out of it. To which point I looked, and no, the Cavs have not only played 3-2 zone in 2 games this year. A few years ago under JB Bickerstaff, they did play a 3-2 zone, which admittedly was set differently with Evan Mobley sliding into a 2-3. But I was like, if Clint Capella screens him at the top, he does struggle to get over the top of the screen to be able to contest the step back versus Trae Young in space. The Pacers pass to Nembhard, that cues kind of a flare / ball screen for Tyrese Halliburton. And as you can see, Evan Mobley's not really getting over the top of that screen to contest Tyrese from 3-point range. That's more shots right there for Tyrese than he attempted against the 23 zone possessions
Yes.
on Friday. Another example where they do have it on the perimeter and Tyrese is pointing to Thomas Bryant, this time against DeAndre Hunter, sent that screen. And when you actually roll, you're drawing the lower big man who is Mobley at the bottom, and you're able to get that skip pass like we talked about. Ben Shepherd finally making some threes in a basketball game. So that was the first way that they attacked it. And I just wanted to show the before and after. I do like those. When I like it when I get to hold on to things and be like, look, this team did this thing better.
It's improvement is always good, especially because so much. This podcast is really good, and I credit you with the lion's share of credit here. Is that this podcast is good because it shows that like it's not always just like players. It's that players being put in positions is so important. And a lot of times, I think people's critiques of coaches are based around lineup data or, was this team ready or this kind of stuff, right? It's like, why don't they just play the lineup with 7 possessions that won by 86 points per 100? Like,
Team
play the
had a
good lineup.
40 net rating. Get that group out.
Exactly. And like the people are like, well, they're not good at adjustments and that kind of stuff. And we get to dive in and be like, these are the small tweaks that create wins. And we get to address, in this case, you highlighting it before it happens and then it being used. And then afterwards being like, this is what worked. This is what changed. The coach I talk to the most, the coach I cover, Darko Rajakovic, wrote like basically a scholarly article about screening angles with Quinn Snyder. And that's what coaches really think about. It's your jam. And Darko and I have had lots of like great back and forth. And Rick also does that, although less willing to have back and forth with me. It's just like, this is what coaches do. This is what coaches want to do. Of course, they can yell up and down and be like, come on, guys. What are we doing here? Be all pissed. But like those small tweaks do create advantages for their players.
And that's a good point because Miles, after the game, was interviewed and asked about the changes that happened in the game. And he said, like, we heard about it, that we weren't getting the ball and that we weren't getting rebounds. Like, we heard about it, we heard about it, we heard about it. And you and I, the little section that I clipped from the podcast to promote the podcast, you were like, as an outsider, I'm not concerned about this coaching staff. I think they're a good coaching staff. And I was like, from game to game, they've made really good adjustments. That's not my concern. My concern is how much emphasis is being put on the basketball being the most important part of basketball. As it turns out, they solved both things.
Squeeze the orange, fellas. Get after it.
That's right. So the other tweak against the zone that we talked about, this play that the Pacers put in against the Bucks in the first round of the playoffs, they were running against 2-3. Effectively, Siakam comes up and sets a flare for Tyrese so that you're going to have options for Tyrese. Not normally as the flare cutter because the low bottom defender is typically going to respect his gravity, but to open up that flare slip, and both of us were like, that worked against 2-3 and it should be equally effective against 3-2. And we both liked the idea of Siakam getting to slip into space in the middle more so than having Miles kind of trying to make plays sometimes with his back to the basket. This was one of the very first things that the Pacers went to in this game. And while Nembhard didn't immediately find the passing angle around Evan Mobley's length on the slip, they did because Siakam is the player playing in the middle and he was able to float. When he draws that attention, then he is kicking out. And that's actually a rhythm set 3 that you're getting out of it. They ran this a lot in the third quarter when the Cavs tried to go back to the zone. And Siakam, then another great option that you get out of it is the high-low, although Miles did miss the turnaround against the shorter defender. And then the thing that you pointed out, or like what I think will actually be open heavily for Siakam, is his ability to attack with a live dribble in the middle of the floor, and that's how he was able to get to the rim. So they almost scored out of this every time that they ran it. Even ended up doing it with Obi Toppin once, where he kind of set that touch screen, slipped into space, and then again, screen the top of the zone, screen Evan Mobley, got the ball screen, forced the tagger to commit, and Obi ended up getting a shot at the rim. So again, a lot of good things from the power forwards forwarding the
Yeah.
Pacers forward. But that's why I was confident that that particular zone buster that the Pacers already had in hand was something that would work for them if they ended up needing it against the 3-2, which it did.
And this also, because we've been talking about like and there was a change in demeanor for Pascal, certainly.
Yeah.
And, it was, in the piece I wrote, I said baptized by his own shot making, coming out as a new player, but him sprinting up the court every possession, like, give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball. It was a stark contrast to what it's been in past games. But Pascal Siakam is an extremely talented player when it comes to control in the middle of the floor. He's quite exceptional, especially for his size. And the Pacers hadn't been able to utilize him in this regard, but you can see, like, when Miles caught in what is effectively a low light, but when Miles catches and he's like, okay, turning, and he's like, I just got to go try and get to the rim. It's like Pascal catches, is comfortable with arms digging in on him, is comfortable with bodies moving around. He's like, I'm in control here. I'm in the dangerous spot, and the defense is afraid of me here. I'm going to leverage this situation for myself or for a teammate. And I mean, it was easy. I don't expect the same thing of Obi. There's a reason Obi's was more like just like a roll to the rim, and Obi was unbelievable, fantastic. That punch at the end of plays you need. But Pascal, even the Cavs will have a response to this. They will be tighter in some areas in this zone. I guess we'll see how much they play it. But Pascal, even if a team is playing good defense, can kind of tease and pull them out of that, and with that control in the middle of the floor. So he was the natural answer to this, I thought. And the Cavs, and credit to Miles, his shot making has been unbelievable all series. But the Pacers, that was their response, was like, the Cavs keep working the shot chart into Miles. We'd like to work the shot chart into everybody via Pascal. And it worked unbelievably well almost every time.
And the fact of the matter is I did look it up. During the regular season, despite the fact that the Pacers were the third most zone team, Pascal had 9 paint touches
Yeah.
against zone. And this game, we just looked at what that play was gathering for him. And also because the two of them did combine for one shot against the zone. And that action is very specifically a screening action between your two best players every time
Yeah.
that they're out there. So that was the other reason why I liked it. But
Well,
I do want to go. Oh,
which
go ahead.
the Raptors do with their two best players, Scotty Barnes and Grady Dick. It's
In
a
terms
joke.
of Grady's ability to reshape the defense, it's probably true. I I do want to talk more specifically just about Siakam in general, though, because I know that we did get some feedback that we went rather lengthy on the podcast in which we were critical of Pascal. So I would rather also like to go lengthy in the praise of Pascal in this basketball game, in particular because, just like I said on that first possession of the game, when Tyrese is kind of being used as a red herring, when really we're going to enter the ball to Siakam. And in those zone plays where it's like, okay, we're now featuring you again here, there was definitely more intention both ways, where Siakam was like, I'm going to demand the basketball, and also we're going to demand that the basketball gets to you because we're going to call some more things specifically for you.
All killer, no filler. The best, like we talked about how he was utilized, yes, but there's a play where the ball squirts out to the corner, and Siakam, it's 50-50 ball, maybe 70-30 for him, but he beats Strus there. And Mobley runs past him. He's probably like 15 feet ahead, running with Turner. Pascal offloads the ball to Nembhard, realizes like, I might have a seam here, and he beats Turner, Mobley to the baseline after he makes his layup. Like, he just saw that there was room, opportunity, sprinted up the court, catch from Nembhard, finishes the bucket. That was like, I went and got the defensive rebound. I started the offensive action by getting it to Nembhard. I realized there was room for me interpreting the floor, not just like a set, but to go get it. And you could see it, whether it was like Neesmith dribbling up for Obi, anybody who wasn't Tyrese. Pascal was like running towards them, like, give me the ball. I have an opportunity. He just felt good about having the ball in his hands, which was a very big change from what it was, in past games. So I don't want to do like, oh, what's his mentals, bro? Like, what's the mentality really? But as far as like what he was doing, it was different and it was super aggressive. And we still only got 10 shot attempts, but he made 9 of them. So it's pretty good.
And when you're getting more stops or forcing turnovers, it opens up
Yep.
opportunities for Siakam to do the early work that's been such a feature of some of what the Pacers have done in transition. But some other things that I noticed from both of the power forwards that I wanted to run the film on is, again, this is like a set action. that I haven't seen the Pacers run much of when these two are on the floor. Hand back to TJ, and then it's kind of thumb roll replace between Obi and Siakam. Siakam sneaking behind kind of an exit screen from Ben Shepherd.
Yep.
Meaningfully to see, is Evan Mobley going to follow Siakam through that exit screen? He doesn't. He's sagging off, and then Ty Jerome kind of makes the wrong play when Ben Shepherd starts to sneak out of it, and Pascal shoots the ball better in this game. Again, that's a set play where you're looking for Pascal in the game. Another thing that I liked is there he's driving the baseline, and he just stayed with it. There's an opportunity
Yep.
to re-attack here, get the ball right back. Obi being very active as a cutter. One of my favorite things about Obi Toppin is that he does a lot while rarely doing too much.
Yeah.
He doesn't play beyond himself, but he's always going to keep doing things. And then that right there, I think both of us have kind of lamented the last couple games that we haven't seen much inverted pick and roll for Siakam. And there he's getting the screen from Nembhard in semi-transition for him to go immediately at that mismatch where Nembhard often is drawing the weaker defensive assignment by comparison to Tyrese. And, Ty Jerome hasn't had the best series outside of
Yep.
the first game when he and Donovan really loaded up on a lot of shot attempts. And that's another example of, hey, the Pacers are better equipped than what the Miami Heat were to attack him and put him into action. Maybe that's impacting some of what he's able to do offensively. And Pascal didn't even touch the ball here. I just like this because he's constantly motioning for them to actually reverse it to him when he had that mismatch. As it turns out, Miles Turner's making every shot in sight, so he didn't get the ball. But that's more demonstrative than we had seen, especially in the second game in Cleveland. This is just against the zone where I wanted to show for Obi Toppin that when TJ flashes into the middle, and as you and I had kind of talked about, maybe shifting Tyrese to the wing so that skip pass opportunity could be there on the flash, Obi's actively cutting right behind him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he really found a lot of creases and seams in the defense in this game by comparison to game 3 where, we were like, hey, if Darius Garland's guarding Ben Shepherd and Obi Toppin at the same time, I don't think he should be able to actively do that. Like, why not cut and get the lob from Miles? And ended up being a missed 3, but just more activity from both of them.
Yeah. And like on top of that too, the Pascal thing. Pascal is shooting 45% from 3 in the playoffs. His true shooting percentage is 64%. But he's taking hardly any shots a game. Like this is like, yes, it was nice to see the 2-for-2 performance, but he should be taking probably like around 5 threes a game. This stuff should be ratcheting up. And this happened last year where it's like the Pacers, there is so much flow play, and it is like, how much do we build the offense out of like looking for these specific things? And Pascal, the shot making has been there over the whole, but what everyone is looking for more of is volume, and volume in the more difficult areas of the game where it's like, maybe we don't have a perfect run going here. Maybe we don't have exactly what we're looking for, but we can get the ball to one of our star players and he can create something. And that stretch, that 8-0 run that he had was like Ty Jerome. It wasn't a terrible closeout. Pascal just shot the ball right over top of him out of the corner. Caught the ball at the end of the shot clock from Obi, pulled up from downtown, hit it over Dean Wade, then got the ball again and just like dribbled to a spot, cashed a pull-up midi over Dean Wade, and then had the like perfectly feathered placed post-entry pass to Obi. And, that first play of the game when he had a perfectly placed entry pass to Aaron Nesmith that they didn't score, it was just like, get this guy the ball, see if you can manipulate with his skills and his advantages. And despite like the volume definitely wasn't there because they routed the Cavs, 10 shot attempts. Every time Siakam touched the ball in game 4, it was like big, huge plays were coming out of that. It was just like in heavy hitter all the time.
Part of the reason why he's still not having the highest shot volume is because the Nembhard Miles Turner pick and roll combination still exists. And now I think when I looked it up, which I don't have it updated, I think from last night in terms, well, yeah, it would have been updated because the other game was at 3:30. I think the Pacers have 3 of the top 4 pick and roll combinations.
Is that good?
Tyrese and Miles have moved ahead of Nembhard and Miles, but there's Tyrese and Miles, Tyrese and Siakam, Nembhard and Miles, all in the top 4 in terms of high volume pick and roll combinations.
What a disgusting, gluttonous, selfish team to keep all of these points for themselves.
All of these high functioning point guards.
Yeah.
Point being, 2 changes is Tyrese still in this game did not run more pick and roll than Nembhard did. 18 picks for Nembhard, 14 picks for Tyrese. He's still operating more so off ball than he is on ball. They're still liking some of the 4-on-4 stuff that they're getting and the optionality that they're getting there. But we were talking about, Tyrese didn't necessarily make all the right reads out of the blitzes and the kind of unique pick and roll coverages that the Cavs were showing. He wasn't
Yep.
always making the correct reads out of the blitzes when it should have been a skip pass, and he's trying to feed Miles, and Miles isn't necessarily totally in the right position to get that type of a pass. And this game, when he's seeing that type of coverage again and they're committing to the ball, he's being deliberate to drag out the defense in order to get that double team and create more space for Miles to catch the ball higher. And then Obi, again, the active cutter, Miles maintains 2 feet in the high paint so that he can be able to convert that pass. Those are the passes Miles is capable of making as a playmaking big. About his third season into the NBA, he became pretty decent if he caught it out of a blitz situation just to automatically find the opposite corner, which can sometimes be a little bit too autopilot for him, but in that case worked out quite well. And then this was in game 1 where I had pointed out, you're so overrated that you're being face guarded on the opposing team's logo. And what a luxury is it if you can run pick and roll between Nembhard and Miles Turner without Tyrese ever even needing to touch the ball, and it's a Gortat and Nembhard gets to the screen. Same thing in game 4 last night where Tyrese being heavily, they used a horn set with Tyrese's one horn, basically horns twist where Nembhard veered towards Tyrese's side, then comes off of Miles' side. They start to switch it to get back. They actually do switch it. Tremendous pass from Nembhard over the top of that switch to get it in there. That's just them sticking with through multiple rounds of stuff and being smart with how they're using Tyrese at the get-go there to go into the horns twist and then went to switch for Nembhard to find that pass.
That play is almost like, it's not bullying, certainly, but it's so good. It's like, we know we have it. We will keep the ball in this action until we get it.
Yeah.
And these aren't bad defenders.
No.
These are good defenders. These are good defenders involved in these actions. And it's just like, we know we can get the edge. We know we can get the advantage here. We're going to work until we get it. That play, of course, that play, that screening action between Nembhard and Turner was kind of sandwiched in between hellacious shooting. Neesmith made the one at the end. Turner is popping the hell off. He's a step off the 3-point line. But that play to me was like, oh man, they can really create offense here. They can really keep it here and manage to create tremendous looks. And they don't even have to go outside of the action. It's just these two guys working it. And obviously the clips you cut up is yep, this is one of the best pick and rolls in the NBA right now. And it has resisted, the NBA, the physical playoff defense that we've seen across the league is this has been resistant, resilient, and effective, which is incredible and awesome. Big shout out Nembhard, who is just on a great contract, I'll say once again.
Yeah, when you can do it in the horns twist and Tyrese is being face guarded to that extent, it manipulates where the taggers are going to be before Nembhard even came off of that pick. And this is why I think, I don't know, maybe we weren't on the same page. I shouldn't speak for you. But that's why I get a little bit frustrated, especially after the last game where I don't think that Tyrese played well in that game. I think that we were fairly critical of Tyrese after game 3. That being said, shot volume is not determined solely by level of aggressiveness. There's other things that go into that. Likewise, aggressiveness is not indicative solely by a player's amount of shot volume. I think Tyrese played a very aggressive game in game 4, and he still barely cracked 10 points in this basketball game. The aggressiveness needed to go to the possession war, which he played a part in, certainly. And they still continued to like the idea that they were able to space the floor with him to the extent that they were and play through the other players. And a way that they did that obviously was activating Siakam, but it's been the continued efficient play of Nembhard and Turner in combination as well.
Mm-hmm. It's the thing you always say, negative space in art is, not to dredge up too much, but yeah, Tyrese had a very bad game 3. And part of it is if it's not happening elsewhere, aggressiveness, how does it manifest? And, deciding is 4-on-4 what we want? What is the coaching staff saying? How do they want to attack? Would they rather that Tyrese takes, only scores 4 points if Nembhard and Turner are completely thrashing and demolishing the other team? Probably. And they'll say, since you have it easy on this side, don't let a ball slip by you on the other side. Don't let, opportunities pass you by when you're pushing in transition. Just dominate every other facet. which is also what our critique of what Pascal was, because we say like, well, in game 2, Dean Wade is guarding him, and that you said like the Pascal Tyrese pick and roll is one of the best in all the NBA. So many teams would like be like, we have to hammer that. Well, Dean Wade was guarding him, so they're not. So Pascal, what is he doing? What does it look like? Are you working off ball? Are you really effective on the glass? Are you winning 50-50 balls?
Yep.
Pascal wasn't at the level that we thought. You're being kind of like a decoy at times, so be uber effective. Josh Hart, yes, he's a guy who now averages 13 points per game and like almost 6 assists, but he kept worming his way into more and more minutes because like, guys aren't guarding me. I have energy. I will expend it everywhere else on the floor. And star players are not above that. And Pascal and Tyrese certainly showed that they aren't in game 4. And they went and they got their noses dirty and they got after it.
I also think that it speaks to, like I said, I use the word magnanimous, but that's just how this roster's been. Like, they've been pretty open and willing that, like, if this is what,
Malleable.
yeah, if this is what's going to work in this particular game, because what we're seeing, like, I can step aside and to do that. But also, Owen Phillips, who wrote at 538 for a very long time and then ended up working, I think, for the Knicks for a time and now back doing his own Substack, the F5, I feel has been making a very good point through the numbers in terms of this playoffs being about a weak link playoffs rather than your strongest link playoffs. And the Pacers are
Yeah.
very much a team that applies to. Like, teams are aggressively, they've been doing it all year, trying to take Tyrese out of the action as much as they can because of the way that he dictates pace, because of what degree of a playmaker he is as a passer. They shadow him. The Pacers are deep in terms of their weakest link often isn't weaker than the opposing team's weakest link in
Yeah.
many circumstances, which has allowed them to advance in the way that they have. But Samson, did you have anything else from this game that you were like, hey, I really want to talk about that? Because like I said, it was kind of hard when you thoroughly dominate a game to this extent. It's kind of like, which clips am I really going to talk about here? Because
Yeah.
I could talk about all of them.
I just want to highlight, neither of us is wearing it, but there was an unbelievable jump pass in the lane from Tyrese that found Turner for an N1. Just
Glances out to open the shot under the rim. And that is another thing where I'm going to sound like a propagandist again, but I don't care. The idea that he gets only easy assists and doesn't actively move the defense is absolutely ludicrous to me. And if you don't understand that, go watch that clip. Unfortunately, if you didn't understand it, you could have read a very lengthy article that I once wrote about this very topic after Tyrese had only played 26 basketball games with the Pacers. Unfortunately, that link no longer exists unless you hop in the Wayback Machine and know how to go find it. But Tyrese moves the defense.
You and I both had the assassination of our work. Yours, for one reason, mine because the website Giphy Cat, which I used to house, Jiffy Cat, yes, Jiffy Cat. I used to house all of my videos on every deep dive I ever, because like the Giphy I think is still running, but I didn't like those GIFs. They were not good. Giphy Cat was good. And so I host all of my deep dives on Giphy Cat GIFs. And then it went bust. And I was like, damn, every big film piece I did is just ruined. Like, I bet it's no longer my pinned tweet, but like my huge piece on Scotty's rookie season and kind of predicting what he'll be good at, why he was an outlier offensive prospect. Not that he's like all the way there, but relative to people's expectations, the physicality and passing he dominated with. You click it, and I'm just talking about like, look at him. He's like a muscular bullfrog in the lane, and it's just link not available. You know what I mean?
It's heartbreaking. I went through a very dark period where I found out my website was going away. The lights got turned off there. And then one day I was looking for my old work and I was like, isn't that what I titled that? Like, why isn't it showing up? Where did it go? And like, probably just south of 1,000 articles, I would guess. Just gone. Like, all of a sudden your resume is just missing. It's like, well, where do I go from here? Nobody knows what work I've done. I have to prove that this piece exists by the fact that Tyrese wore my t-shirt. It did exist. He did read it.
You're sending links to tweets that are quote tweeting your tweet of the piece, and they're like, this is awesome. This is the best work I've ever seen. They're like, well, can we read it? Unfortunately, no.
The funny thing is over the summer, I have that article saved on Patreon, the written portion of it.
Yeah.
But Patreon, you can't, like, it was all on Chorus at Indy Cornrows. It was with streamable clips because I could embed video over there. I can't embed
Mhm.
video on Patreon. So I was like, I'm going to have to go back and trim all those clips to the size that fits on Patreon. And I started doing it one day and then I didn't do it. I'm like, if people get this 2 years later, are they really going to want it? But I was like, I want a published copy of it. But as soon as I publish it, it's going to be in everybody's email inbox. They're going to be like, what is this? But I do have the written form of it saved somewhere, but the rest of my work is totally gone. Except for
PD,
the few that I wrote freelance at SB Nation's flagship still exist, but
that's the difference between you and I. You actually went and did that, whereas PD, I can't remember. I think he messaged me and he was like, "By the way, Giphy Cat is going down." Like he's like, "Go get the video," and I was like, "Oh damn, that sucks." I just never did. I was just like, "Well, I shot the burning arrow into the boat as my article sailed away, and I was like, that'll be all right."
were you just gonna count on my QTs that like you knew that I thought that the work was good and that I would continue hiring you despite your lack of resume?
I actually was counting on Jenny's quote tweet of mine. I'm like, she's an NBA coach. She said this work is exemplary. Anybody, Bueller? Surely this is enough. You don't have to see the work. It's simply, well, you can see what I wrote, I guess. And maybe
Just screenshots.
my prose is so picturesque that you don't even need the video.
I do remember a line from that very article. I think that you talked about the Raptors defense being compared to trying to put on a fitted sheet, which I felt
Oh
very
yeah.
fitting of that scheme.
Yeah, yeah.
See, things stick here. Like earlier, you were like, I was hoping you wouldn't remember that I said that about Ben Shepherd. You should know by now, Samson. Caitlin's don't forget. Like, I remember these things.
This is a Caitlyn thing?
Yeah. It's unique
Okay.
to us as a people group. No, I
What
mean,
about Caitlyn's with a Y? Were they did they have this gift?
who knows what that group of people does? We don't associate with them.
Wow.
I couldn't
Yeah.
do this job that I do if I didn't have a pretty good memory. Like you said, you were going to brag and say that, I'm not going to be humble. I'm good at sports. I have a good memory. I don't forget things. That sticks with me.
So we have a nickname because I also have a fairly strong memory. I don't utilize it the way that you do. Like you remember something and you go clip it. Me, I'm just like, yeah, I'll just talk about it. I'll be like, remember this play that happened, whatever? And Kithka, Keeks, as she's known on NBA Twitter, and Blake, we all affectionately refer to my memory as LeBrain because LeBron is famous for like remembering this one play and talking about it, which is more so my style. I'm like, remember this one play where these guys are all right here, and I'm trying to paint a picture. Whereas you're like, because you're better at your job than I am, you're like, I went and clipped it actually, and so yours is better because you can show people. Mine is just like, oh
I
yeah,
feel like this is like a humble brag though. Like I remembered it without having to keep a video file.
no,
I
no,
don't
no, no,
need an
no,
MP4 to store that
no, no,
away.
no, you remembered it. You remembered it the same way. You just did the work to have that memory benefit the public, whereas I don't. I'm like, I remembered it. Cool. You're never gonna see it. I just like pretend my my retelling is good enough.
What is the worst though is when you do remember a play and you need it for something and then you're like, I'm gonna go look for that. Like I know I saw this specific sequence and then you can't find it. There was one night where like I was up till like 3 in the morning. I'm like, I know that happened at one point in a game. Never found it.
Especially since I no longer have the synergy access. I'm like, damn. I don't even know if I'll go look anymore. Also, I wrote like my one draft piece, and I do have to keep writing draft pieces once the Raptors situation is the lottery is actually settled. But I wrote the one, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna bang out a few of these. And then I was just like, I don't have synergy access, man. I don't know if I'm gonna like go comb through YouTube clips to this degree. But yeah, we'll see.
Speaking of the jump passes piece, I do want to let people know that when I wrote that piece for years, I had no access to video anything.
That's what you and I
So
used
when
to
I
do.
wrote that piece, I rewatched 26 entire basketball games over like a 2.5 week span in the summer and clipped every pass and then had to catalog whether he jumped or not. And then I hand tracked those numbers. So I don't want to hear that I'm a synergy merchant or a genius sports merchant because I was doing that pencil and paper.
You and I both. Well, that is the for people who have known our work for years, that is all of our most popular work is because you and I were like, we watched everything and tracked everything. And my most popular piece probably ever was when I tracked every Scotty possession through like 50 games and was just like, this is not the bogus matchup data that comes from other places. I just watched and I was like, this is who guarded him. This is what happened for everything. And I've done that for OG. I've done that for Scotty. I've done that for Pascal. These types of when I want to see like, does OG have more off the bounce juice? He did, just not as a primary. And because he was successful and he could beat bigs off the bounce. Nobody wants to hear about OG unless he becomes a pacer. then we can hear plenty about him. But Pascal also kind of like when he was having the down Tampa year, I do quotation marks because it was a role switch. And the Tampa year was where he started to not just be like a pace and space, rim runner and like attack in isolation on occasion, but a post hub who exhibited control and finesse, which we obviously see is how he provides the most impact with the Pacers. It's like we used to be just like bloggers who had, I guess, time to spare to just watch everything and write it down and keep track. And that was why I think both of our work, yours more than mine, just by proxy of the size of the audience, or the following. I could to get
How
the
do you think
Evan
I got the following?
bots, presumably.
Just haters.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, exactly.
chock full of haters
Angry
preying
Raptors
on my
fans,
downfall.
angry
Yeah.
Raptors fans,
Angry
I
Raptors
presume.
fans that just want to
Yeah, but
quote
it
tweet me,
was because you and
ratio me.
I, because you and I separately would be like, let's go look at something very intently and see what it is.
I
And
feel like that's how
that's
we spent the summer before you moved to Toronto.
big time. Just
I remember that we were like texting the one night and I was like, "What are you doing?" And you're like, "I'm up looking at this." And I was like, "I'm up looking at this."
exactly. It's just, yeah. And whether or not there's like the outcome you want comes out of it, watching that much film back is just like you pick up on small things. Like maybe you notice that Andrew Nemhard steals a lot of tips. Maybe you notice the way that Miles Turner jumps on jump balls. I don't know. But yeah.
That was valuable work, Samson. The other day, not valuable work. Have you had projects? You don't have to say what they are, but have you had projects where you're like, I think I'm seeing something, and then you go track it down and you're like, nope, I'm not. The other day, this happened to me last week. I was like, I know what I'm going to write based on something that happened in that playoff game. And I was like, do I have time to get to that now or should I mark it as a summer project? I was like, I think I do because there's 2 days off. So the other day,
Mhm.
I spent 4 hours looking and I was like tabulating all this stuff. I was like, okay, this is going to be great. I get done. I'm like, this isn't what I thought at all. So I was just like,
Mhm.
well, I got nothing. Dead in the water.
A couple times, but there was this thing back when Lewis was a 538 writer and had the Genius Sports Access or whatever. We had this thing where basically I would have an idea and I'd be like, I kind of want to confirm this. I've watched a bunch, and I'd ask Lewis, like, send me the points per possession on this. And I had a run of being correct about so many little fun things. Although there's been a few times where I was like, I think that this is maybe, better than I thought it would end up being, which is
Yeah.
disappointing, of course. But yeah, although in there's a little bit more of a, like the Raptors have underperformed. So you, rather than explaining why things are awesome, you have to start explaining why things are not. So like doing a deep dive is like, here's every single mid-post action that the Raptors run for Scotty Barnes. It has not been good, despite everyone being like, he's Kawhi. It's like, okay, well, not good. It's getting better, and it could be a real weapon for him. And I'm excited for the development. But it being like the massive part of his shot diet and the way that they used him was like tough. There's a reason they were the worst on ball scoring team
I
in
feel
the
like my
NBA.
entire existence, the Bjorken year, was like, you know what? I have to do this deep dive on why this thing doesn't work.
Well, what did we call it when you came on? Or what did I call it? It was like offense for the sake of itself. I believe I called it a hat on a hat, right? Like those types of
Mm-hmm.
actions. It's just like, why are they doing this, man? And then he got fired because he said no hats, no do-rags, not on the plane.
That was one of the reasons.
Oh, Lord. What an insane thing. Are you going to the meadow after this? Well, you have to edit. So I'm
I
free
don't get to
after
go to the
this.
meadow.
You have to do more work.
We do have a number of questions about you that you need to answer, though, because when I was editing the last one, you asked me, would you rather be known for intelligence or kindness as your leading trait? And then you never said. Like, I edited this waiting. I was like, I wonder what he thought. You never said.
I think at the end of it
Made
all,
me answer it, but
I think at the end of it all, kindness would be a good one. Although I think
do you feel pressured to say that because that's what I said and you want to look like the nice guy?
no, actually you know this. You know this quite well. Probably one of the reasons I'm your favorite podcast partner is that I never feel pressured to agree with you, actually. A lot of people do, and I'm like, no, I don't I actually don't think so. No, I think kindness is a better trait. Intelligence can be a more useful trait, but kindness is never really bad. So kindness is great. Although I think oftentimes I do come across as like intelligence first because I'm quite aloof typically. And kindness and aloofness don't really go
You've
together.
never been aloof with me in that regard.
Yeah, we're
Other
friends.
than your like 2-word answers that you give sometimes that I have trouble interpreting.
It is what it every single podcast is like, what does Samson's text mean? What does of course mean? Of course means of course. And I gave you another one. My favorite 2-word response. Hell yeah.
See, but that has more punch and meaning behind it. Like,
Well, so did the Pacers in game 4.
it's true. You met the moment. The next point is, which we talked about this beforehand, but there was somebody on Patreon who was very disappointed and now isn't going to have a blessed
Yeah.
day because you didn't say have a blessed day at the
So
end of your article. Please
yeah,
answer for your crimes.
yeah, I apologize for that. You will get it at the end of this podcast. It was because that game was so unorthodox. Like I wrote one of the little mini paragraphs in there was on my absolute apathy to the 9-0 run and 13-2 run that the Cavs broke off because it simply didn't mean a thing. And in, no, I wouldn't say haste, but in like, I expeditiously finished the piece and nothing that happened at the end of the game could have changed anything. James Johnson came in and I was like, there it is. The game has been decided.
Trust the experts, Samson.
Yes.
Trust those experts.
Exactly. Trust the experts. And then so there I was. And I just was like, I finished the piece, sent it off to Caitlin. And I erroneously forgot to put have a blessed day, for which I apologize. But you'll get more of them.
Please let the record show how interested and how much the Indiana fan base appreciates your work. They missed your tagline. Next question is, if you came to Indiana, would you be willing to go to the Indy Zoo? The people want to know.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, because there like all the heavy hitters are there. There's bears, there's a walrus, there's cheetah runs, there's elephants.
I guess at the risk
dolphin
of
dome.
At the risk of losing meadow time, because this could go long. Because in Saskatchewan, where I grew up, there's like the mystical bovine creatures that don't really exist elsewhere. Because like a moose, a moose is kind of, most people don't see a moose in their lifetime.
Have you seen a moose in the wild?
Many.
I was going to ask this because that's one of my favorites. They have moose at the Columbus Zoo. Those are cool.
I was going to ask, like, what are the interesting animals in Indiana? Because Canada, we have a lot of animals that seem like mystical, powerful bovine, like moose, elk, caribou, like these massive creatures. They're just like they're everywhere in Saskatchewan. And what do they have in Indiana that is of particular intrigue that's like native to there?
Well, I didn't actually know this until recently. It's very terrific that you asked this question. My aunt and uncle live in a rural portion of Indiana. They have a very large yard. They took video and there was a bald eagle flying in their backyard.
Ooh.
And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, I didn't know eagles were in Indiana. Lo and behold, I've learned that in this particular area of Indiana, because I don't want to say what's there in the near vicinity because it's totally going to dox my aunt and uncle if I say it, but I can tell you after the podcast. But in that same vicinity, I was in that area, and my sister tells me, or actually my dad tells me, he's like, I saw a massive bird while I was driving to work. And I was like, well, what kind of bird? And he's like, I don't really know. And he told some friends this, and they're like, oh, it was an eagle. And he's like, an eagle in Indiana? He's like, I don't think so. And they're like, oh, yeah. Like, there's an eagle's nest out on the corner of this country road. So, got in the car with my sister and my nephew. I was like, show me the eagle's nest. And up in the corner of the woods, massive eagle's nest, and you could see their heads popping out. There was 2 young baby eagles and an adult eagle.
Wow.
So apparently in my area, you come, you get to see an eagle. Pure
And the
Americana right there.
free and the
I truthfully
home
did not know that
of
there was eagles flying about in my vicinity,
darkness.
because the only time I had ever seen an eagle was at the zoo. I had never seen one in the wild, but that's probably the
Every
coolest animal
American,
I've seen in the wild.
every American has to see a bald eagle once in their life, I feel like. I've seen
First
many
time for me.
beavers. Well, now you're a true American. Ours is like less, ours is a cool animal. Actually, no, there's this great joke from The Office where Dwight and what's the boss's Michael are standing in like a garbage dump, and Dwight says like no other animal could do this. He says maybe beavers, but not like this. And beavers are not as cool as bald eagles, I'll say, because that's our animal, the beaver.
What is the coolest animal? Not necessarily only in Canada, because you've been many places. What is the coolest animal you've seen in the wild?
In the wild, this is a good question. I
What'd you
mean,
see in
when I
Mexico and New Zealand? I mean, you were places where animals would be.
Yeah, New Zealand is very interesting because there's the thing with New Zealand, right? That they now I don't know if everyone listening believes in the history or in the scientific history of the world. If you don't, you know, respectfully disagree. But the theory, right, is that New Zealand breaks off of Australia, and in doing so, creates an environment where there are no natural predators there. And so that leads to they have 16 different species of flightless birds in New Zealand because there's nothing hunting birds. They don't have to fly, so they forget how to fly. And the kiwi is that's New Zealand's bird. It's very cool. Like the long it's and there's also like the most populous version of that bird, I think, was the weka. And it was just like just like walking around to be on trails everywhere. There were dolphins I saw in New Zealand. I saw lots of stuff in New Zealand, but I also saw lots of stuff in Mexico. I saw the biggest locust in the world when I was in Mexico, and I was freaked out by it. It was like this big. It was like the length of this part of the microphone, and it was huge. It looked like a green hot dog with legs, and we were all freaked out by it because we were playing basketball. And then this little girl on a scooter came by, and just she almost stepped on it like 6 times. I was like, Jesus Lord, I couldn't believe it. It's just. I also saw a comment that was like, I'm surprised at how summarizing skittish, Samson and Caitlin are to these things. But yeah, I get a little skittish with some bugs. But yeah, I've seen lots of cool animals. But I think the rhino is my favorite. I've never seen it in the wild, of course. But
The rhino and the hippo are cool. The hippo at the Cincinnati Zoo is cool. The coolest animal that I've seen in the wild, which I'm confident you've probably seen in Canada, I'm guessing, I saw a bear in the mountains of Tennessee. Was it
and what kind of bear?
a black bear? Mhm.
I've seen.
It was a baby black bear. It wasn't, a giant bear, but
There's
I did see
there's
it
a
running about in the mountains of Tennessee.
there's a lot of bears where I grew up, and there's cougars where I grew up. There's lynx, there's moose, there's deer of different. There's mule deer. There's a whole bunch of types of deer. There's caribou. There's like everything. And there was this like northern lake or like park called Waskesiu, and that was the first time I saw a bear when I was like maybe 7 or 8. You just go drive to the Waskesiu like dump, and you just sit there and bears will come and pick over the garbage. Those were black bears. Grizzly bears are obviously much more mountainous, incredible beings. And brown bears just doing their thing. Yeah, bears are awesome. Love bears. Their ears, cute little. Anyway, not to do
Polar
too much.
bears are neat too. I
I've
haven't
never
seen them.
seen a
I've
polar
never
bear.
seen one in the wild, but I have seen those at the zoo.
I really wanted to take a train ride because they have these trains that go up to Churchill, Manitoba, which is just at the bottom of Hudson's Bay. And there's a lot of polar bears that live there, and you can take this train ride to go see them. And it's the convergence of two big things in my. I love trains and public transit to more of a degree, but I love trains and I love polar bears. And someday I'd like to make that trip to go see them.
I respect it. So what I've learned here is that if you come to Indiana, you have a full schedule ahead of you. You have to see the Pacers play a basketball game. You have to make a trip to the zoo, and I will drag you to Nicey Treat because you're going to go. The difference being is Nicey Treat has a full menu of dairy-free popsicles, and they also have ones with ice cream that I would allow you to have, especially because I'm confident there's a hot chocolate one, and I'm like, Samson would love this.
Ooh.
Samson would love this.
That's what growing up my parents would buy. Is like, of course there were popsicles, of course there were freezies, but the number one was the Revel. That's what it was called. I think that was like the
It's like a
brand.
fudgesicle.
Well, fudgesicles, yes, but the Revel was like the chocolate casing with ice cream inside. That to
Oh,
me
okay.
was the top of the top.
Oh, and I also told you needed to go to Sonic because you said that there's not Sonic in Canada. You missed out on that one too. You got a
So
full
many
schedule.
things. And I got to see a bald eagle.
Oh, that's in a different vicinity than Indy, but
Well,
I don't know. I don't know if you'll see an eagle just flying about downtown Indy.
my fingers. I thought in America there were bald eagles everywhere, just like you could see one every day. I thought.
America, yeah, that's
A
what it is.
famously not endangered, very popular bird. Yeah.
You'll walk out of Gamebridge. You'll be playing basketball at the court there, and an eagle will just swoop down and take the basketball, fly off.
Wait, do you know who Jack? I can't remember Jack. I met him at Summer League. I know him very well. His name is Pistons Jack on Twitter.
Okay,
You've seen him?
I'm
He's
aware of him. Yes.
he's really kind. He's really nice. He's from Australia, and when he went to Detroit, he was like, Cade came up to him. They like linked up. He threw out the first pitch at a Tigers game. They sent him to New York. Like the city of Detroit embraced him like a son.
He's beloved.
What happens when I show up in Indiana? There's no baseball team. Can I throw out the first tire at the Indy 500? Like, what do I get? Will I be
And you'll
celebrated?
probably get to be in the pace car. That's probably what'll happen.
Do I get to throw a T-shirt to fans? Like, we got Samson Folk here. Everyone's like,
I mean, they used to let people be in a race car at Pacer games, and that person would rev it up. So, like, they'd pick some celebrity, like Caitlin Clark would do it. Other local, legends would do it. Surely, if they brought that back, you'd be the first call. I'm guessing.
I figured as much. That
All
okay.
I'm saying is nobody's asking me to come to Toronto. Like, nobody's asking for this. Nobody sent any question to me and was like, "Would you go to the Toronto Zoo?" Like, that didn't happen.
Yeah, everyone here is grumpy though. Maybe it'll be better tonight if they win the lottery, but everyone here is grumpy.
Please tell the people that I endorse the Toronto Raptors as a fellow Cooper. This is important. Let them know I'm trying to get goodwill back on my side.
Maybe if they let me rev an engine or something, then we'll see. Or if they let me touch the hippo at this.
That's in Cincinnati. I'm not taking you to Cincinnati.
Okay, well, what animal can actually? I don't want to touch the animal. It's disrespectful.
I think that they would let you touch a stingray.
I don't want no. I know it gives me the heebie-jeebies. I don't want to touch a stingray. It's too.
There's also a cool penguin area there.
Penguins are awesome.
Yep.
Okay. Anyway,
Yeah, but anyways, we've talked about this through. Those were the questions that people had for you. As I mentioned, they did bring up that you created the tagline as Obi as bellwether of hot girl basketball. Hence why I decided to wear this nifty hat in tribute to you and your hat wearing and your phrase creating. So I think this wraps up. I mean, it's almost harder to talk about games that either go really poorly or really great Because like when everything just goes so great, it's like, am I just going to run a bunch of clips of like making a million shots? I don't know. But the Pacers did functionally do things better in addition to shooting the ball in a tremendous fashion in the first half, as they've done in other games this year. Thought they showed improvement on both ends of the floor. It's possible that they get, 3 chances now to close this thing out. Oh, Pacers Oracle, are they going to do it in game 5?
No. I think game 6 is
They need to
where it
go
ends.
back to Game Bridge to finish this out.
I suspect.
Okay.
Boom, baby. Yes, sir.
You got all the phrases down. You're already going to be more beloved.
Yes.
I'm going to let you say what you want
What's
to
a
say.
Raptors phrase? Tell me a Raptors phrase.
We the North.
Okay, well, yeah, that's pretty easy.
That's right.
All right,
Question.
for everyone who enjoyed this, thank you so much for tuning in. If you would like, as you've surely recognized, that this is not work that is replicated elsewhere, it was unique in what it posits, in what it presents, and you want to support, you can do so at Basketball She Wrote, the Patreon, which supports Caitlin, of course, the best basketball writer in the world, and myself by extension of that. We thank you so very much. If you have the means, we thank you so very much for tuning in. And whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.